Chapter 351, A Haze of Doubts and Suspicions. The more Blue River thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Thinking of this, Blue River opened up his friends list and planned a search for other guild leaders. But when he saw that his friends list was empty, he stared blankly for a moment, before realizing that he was using an open account, not his Blue River account. How could he have those guys as friends on this account? Helpless, Blue River contacted Changing Spring, who was still in the 10th server, and gave him his analysis of the situation. Wait, Changing Spring gave a simple reply when the message came through. Not long after, Changing Spring messaged again. This time, the message was even simpler, Q. Blue River was startled at first, but luckily, he was familiar with Changing Spring's typing style and understood that he wanted him to get on QQ. He tabbed out of the game and opened up QQ. He immediately received a group chat invite. When he joined, he saw that the chat group was very active. There were 10 people in the room, all using their in-game IDs. There was not one that Blue River didn't recognize. A few more people came in after he joined. In the chat room, there was more than one person representing each guild. Similar to their Blue Brook guild, besides the 10th server's guild leader, the true guild leader had also joined the group chat. Has everyone gotten a feel for the situation? The first to speak was Herb Garden's Arasema. Let's not say the account IDs. Just say how many you have inside, so we can have a clearer picture of the situation, Tyrannical Ambitions Cold Knight suggested. Seeing these two speak, Blue River could tell that the other guilds were in the same position as him. They also realized that the high-level players in Guild Happy were their players. We have 4 on our side, Cold Knight took the lead. Same. 4, Blue River followed. 3, Herb Garden's Plantago Seed said. 2, Samsara's Lonely Drink was here as well. Team Samsara had high ambitions for the season. Their guild wasn't the strongest in-game, but they were putting in great amounts of effort towards their development. 1. The other 2 guilds had 1 infiltrator. After adding the numbers up, there were 15 altogether. And right now, Guild Happy had a total of 19 level 35 and above players. Apart from Lord Grim, Soft Mist and Cleansing Mist, there was only 1 high-level player that had nothing to do with them. The chat group's members sent out shocked faces one after the other. If the other side hasn't figured it out yet, then we're in a good spot, Herb Garden's Plantago Seed said. I get what you mean, Blue River said, but how couldn't he have figured this out? All of us requested for an invite after Happy reached level 5. That other high-level player might have joined before this, but this time, with so many of us running over all of a sudden, it'd be strange if he didn't feel something was wrong, no? But look, all of us have been invited into the party. This party is clearly for challenging the Guardian, which means he's not suspicious of us yet, Plantago Seed said. That's not necessarily true. Maybe he just wants to use us to beat the Guardian, Blue River said. Then, he'll never be able to get the Guardian, Plantago Seed replied. Everyone heard this and immediately understood. Plantago Seed meant that if they wanted to, they could intentionally feign that they were unable to defeat the Guardian. Even though their accounts would have some losses, these open accounts had been prepared to be sacrificed anyways, whether they succeeded or not. I say, even if we don't try for the Guardian, they're more than good enough to beat it on their own. Losing a few times would at most damage their image a bit, which isn't even close to what our goals are, no, Cold Knight said. Everyone began contemplating again after hearing this. Doing things like this wouldn't cause a lot of damage. But if we do things like this, it might even strengthen their trust in us, Herb Garden's guild leader, Arasema, suddenly said. True, Changing Spring approved, but didn't give any reasons why. Everyone in the group chat was an experienced player. Even though they didn't hear the reasoning, just by thinking about it, they were able to figure out the reason. The difficulty for the Guardian was fixed. It depended upon the guild's level and had nothing to do with the players' levels. If there were 20 level 70 players, beating the level 1 Guardian wouldn't be difficult in the slightest. But for level 35 to 39 players, they couldn't be too careless when fighting the level 1 Guardian. When the level cap in Glory was level 50, normal guilds had to gather together 20 level 50 players in order to defeat the Guardian. It was just that as players became more and more experienced, the level requirement decreased. For guilds backed by clubs, 20 level 30 or so players were more than enough to defeat a level 1 guardian now. But Happy was different. Apart from these moles, who harbored ill intentions, the guild could be considered to be a guild completely comprised of new players. The situation would be the same as when Glory first opened. New players weren't good enough to beat the Guardian, so level 35 to 39 players beating the Guardian would actually be a difficult task. In order to avert Lord Grimm's suspicious and gain Lord Grimm's trust, it might be best to act like new players and get stuck on the Guardian a few times, erasing any doubts that they were experts from the top guilds. Not a bad idea. Let's do that, Tyrannical Ambitions Zhang Yu said. Soon after, everyone agreed. In-game, the level 35 and above characters were invited into the party. Along with Lord Grimm, Soft Mist, Cleansing Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion, this put the party at exactly 20 players. At this moment, Lord Grimm was telling them the strategy to defeat the Guardian and was almost done explaining. They obviously knew the strategy. Even if they needed to, they wouldn't listen. They had to pretend to be new players. Chen Guo's spirits were raised when she saw that the guild finally had a few level 35 and above players. It was already late at night, but she didn't want to sleep yet. Not just her, almost everyone in Guild Happy was still online. Everyone wanted to see the Guardian fall. As a result, they continued to receive guild quests, while paying attention to the announcements. Yi Shu finished explaining the strategy, but the party channel was completely quiet. He had no idea if they understood what he had said. When Chen Guo saw this reaction, she immediately began feeling uneasy. She had been in other guilds, before she had joined Excellent Dynasty, and participated in the Guardian quests. She knew very well that the boss's strength couldn't be looked down on. If the party failed the challenge, all of the penalties for dying would be assumed. The cost for taking the challenge would also be wasted. This challenge required money in order to try. In addition, the success or failure of the challenge would be announced in the world chat. Failing the challenge would undoubtedly hurt the guild's morale, as well as damage the guild's image. To the guilds backed by clubs, they felt that these penalties weren't serious enough. But in Chen Guo's eyes, they were more than enough. Even though a god like Yi Shu was presiding over the challenge, Chen Guo was still worried. Are you sure about this? Maybe it'd be better to wait until you've reached a higher level, Chen Guo said. Relax, Yi Shu replied with a smile. Look at these slow-witted idiots. They didn't react at all. Did they understand anything you said? Chen Guo looked at the chat record in the party channel. It was all Yi Shu's messages. The others were completely silent. Chen Guo suddenly thought of something else. She stretched her neck out and asked Tang Ru, Little Tang, how much of it did you understand? But as Chen Guo expected, Tang Ru was completely puzzled and she shook her head. For someone who had never seen a guardian, Yi Shu's explanation for beating it was too much for her to digest. See, this isn't good, Chen Guo was worried, these guys are all new players. They don't understand anything you're saying and they're not asking either. New players who pretend they understand when they actually don't are the scariest type. How are you guys going to beat it? Don't worry about Little Tang. Her mechanics are enough to get her through. She can learn while fighting it. There won't be a problem, Yi Shu laughed. I wasn't talking about her. I'm talking about those guys, Chen Guo pointed to the names on Yi Shu's party list. Oh, these guys? They're even less of a problem. Yi Shu didn't turn his head, but the corner of his lips were clearly raised. When Chen Guo tried to look closer, the weird smile on his face had already disappeared. All that was left was his usual calm appearance. What's going on? Chen Guo felt that there was something she was missing. I can't be certain that there aren't any new players in the bunch, but it's very unlikely that all of them are new players, Yi Shu grinned. How can you be so certain? Chen Guo asked. Because of their levels, Yi Shu said. Is it really only because of their levels? Chen Guo said. Yi Shu nodded his head. That's not a good reason, Chen Guo said. There's an abnormality in level differences in the 10th server, Yi Shu said. He then shifted the subject. You probably didn't know that every guild backed by clubs have a batch of open accounts, right? Open accounts? Accounts that haven't joined a guild, Yi Shu said. What are those for? Chen Guo clearly didn't know. To do bad things. For example, to become undercover moles, Yi Shu said. Chen Guo was startled. She had heard many stories about undercover moles. So you're saying that these characters are all moles from these top guilds? Chen Guo said. There were never very many level 35 and above characters. Even rarer are those without a guild already. With so many coming out all of a sudden, besides these open accounts owned by these top guilds, there aren't very many other possibilities, Yi Shu said. Chapter 352, each with their own motives. Then if you clearly knew that these high-leveled players were spies, why did you let them join? Chen Guo asked. They'll help me beat the Guardian. Higher-leveled players are always better than lower-leveled players, Yi Shu said. But what if these guys don't try on purpose? Chen Guo couldn't relax. Haha, even if they don't try, they wouldn't play too badly. If it's too obvious that they are trying to lose, wouldn't they be exposed? Don't forget their identities. They're spies. Getting exposed right after getting in just for our Guardian? That's definitely not worth it. Spies can only be used once you know, Yi Shu said. Chen Guo didn't know what to say. She could only look at those high-leveled characters with sympathy. They probably thought that their infiltration had been successful. Seeing that Chen Guo wasn't going to ask any more questions, Yi Shu turned his head and asked his team another question. So that's pretty much it. Is there anything you didn't understand? It doesn't really matter. We'll just do what you tell us to do. Steamed Bun Invasion's reply was as simple as ever. Got it, the others also replied. They were trying really hard to act the part of new players. Good. After seeing everyone's response, he clicked. The originally 2 teams of 10 players each were split into 7. 6 teams had 3 players, while 1 team had 2 players, Yi Shu and Su Mucheng. We're going in, Yi Shu said, and then the 20-player group was quickly sent into the Guardian's instance dungeon. This dungeon only had one boss. As soon as they entered, they saw the outline of the sleeping Guardian through the thick fog. Teams 1, 2, and 3 go left. Teams 4, 5, and 6, go right, Yi Shu ordered. Each team had an obvious number labeled onto them. Thus, 3 teams went left, while the other 3 teams went right. Stop, Yi Shu called. The 6 teams had no choice but to stop. These orders were too simple. Even if Blue River and the others were pretending to be noobs, they couldn't make such a mistake. If they made such a mistake, they wouldn't be noobs, they'd be idiots. Each side make a line. Melee classes in front. Ranged classes in the back. Maintain a 24-unit distance between each other. Do you guys know how to calculate these units? Hover your mouse over the other players and look at the coordinates shown. Then check your coordinates and calculate, Yi Shu patiently explained. The spies didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seemed like Lord Grimm really was treating them like noobs and teaching them every little detail. If they were noobs, this should have been something to be happy about. Except to these players, listening to this sort of extremely basic knowledge only made them want to cry. Yes, just like that. Bamboo Street, move back a tiny bit. The guy on the right, move 1 step to the left. Yi Shu began instructing them as if he were a kindergarten teacher teaching small children. The spies were tossing and turning from side to side. They had to continue pretending to not know anything. They couldn't reveal that they weren't noobs. How much time should they take to get into position? If they got into position too quickly, it'd be bad if they appeared too experienced, but if they got into position too slowly, wouldn't they look like idiots? They were in a knot. Some intentionally acted stupid, but their mistakes were quickly caught by Yi Shu. After a few minutes, everyone was finally in the correct position. Good, no one move. Wait for my orders, Yi Shu said. They were all silent. They were already impatiently thinking of how to get themselves killed by the Guardian and hurry up and get out of this dungeon. Pull it, Yi Shu sent Su Mucheng's cleansing mist a message. Yes sir, Su Mucheng's cleansing mist lifted her cannon and fired anti-tank missiles. The 3 anti-tank missiles shot forward. The spies on both sides were jumping with joy on the inside. The battle had finally begun. Quite a few were already planning on moving forward. Jump back 3 steps, but how could they have expected that Lord Grim would give an order all of a sudden? This order was also extremely simple. If they made a mistake, there would be no excuses they could make. Thus, the spies had no choice but to follow the order and jump back 3 steps. Players, who had fought against the Stat Guardian before, were very unhappy right now. This was because they knew what these 3 steps back indicated. Bang bang bang. 3 cannon shots. The explosions from the anti-tank missiles seemed very minuscule compared to the enormous silhouette of the Guardian. An angry roar burst out and the silhouette stood up. Just by looking at the Guardian's bodily proportions, it was very easy to see that the Guardian and the players weren't in the same weight class. Ow! Another angry roar. As if its body was weightless, the Guardian suddenly jumped out from the fog and landed in the space between the 2 teams. Everyone's screens shook. This was Glory's visual effect during an earthquake. The dust and earth that was lifted up surged throughout the surroundings like waves. However, Yi Shu had already ordered everyone to jump back, allowing them to dodge the shockwave. Those who were familiar with the Guardian had wanted to act like they didn't know what was coming. That way, they'd get swept away by the shockwave and then have the Guardian step on them with its feet to kill them, but Lord Grim had accurately predicted the distance of the shockwave. His super simple orders made it so there was no room for them to make mistakes. Wait for my commands before you attack, Yi Shu repeated. The spies couldn't disobey and had no choice but to sit on the sidelines like obedient children. Yi Shu's Lord Grim swung his myriad manifestation umbrella in front of him and began shooting. These tiny shots made it seem like they were completely ineffective against the Guardian. However, these were just visual effects. The damage that should have been dealt was dealt. Lord Grim jumped back, continually firing. Cleansing Mist also stayed beside him and continued to fire at the Guardian. Watching, the spies were having trouble understanding what was going on. If Lord Grim was supposed to establish the aggro, then why was the launcher still attacking? What type of strategy was this? As they continued to be puzzled, the Guardian rushed forward. With its gigantic body, each step traversed several units. In just a few steps, the Guardian arrived in front of 2 players. It lifted its foot and stepped down towards them. Chapter 353, Even if you want to die, you can't. The spies on the 2 sides were in complete silence, hoping very much that Lord Grim and Cleansing Mist had been killed by the stomp. But Lord Grim's fame in the 10th server wasn't baseless. If he had gotten killed so easily, then the guilds that had been crushed by him would feel even more humiliated. Those who knew of Lord Grim's identity, like Blue River, were already quite certain that the launcher, Cleansing Mist, was Su Mucheng. The synergy between the 2 of them were considered at the peak, even in the Pro-Alliance. So while others were puzzled over their strange strategy, Blue River felt sad. He knew that they were able to use strategies that many normal players were unable to do, or even hope to understand, because the gap between their skill levels was simply too large. Sure enough, everyone's worries, hopes and doubts were for nothing. Amidst the earth waves caused by the Guardian stomp, the 2 characters were high up in the air. Their guns were pointed towards the ground with an aerial fire, allowing them to dodge the Guardian stomp, as well as the shockwaves brought by it. The 2 characters landed behind the Guardian. Even though the Guardian wasn't slow, its enormous body still made it slightly sluggish. Lord Grim and Cleansing Mist's attacks in this short moment made all of the surrounding spies wide-eyed with awe. Quite a few of them gasped in admiration, although Blue River and the others, who knew his identity, were somewhat calmer. The Guardian finished turning around. This time, he didn't lift his foot to stomp down. He swung his arms and whirled a strong wind. But Yi Shu and Su Mucheng had been prepared. They easily avoided it and then circled around behind the Guardian again to continue attacking. It went on like this for a while, making everyone who was watching dumbstruck and in awe. The Guardian's sluggishness was only relative. In reality, its movements were quite agile. But these 2, with their quick fingers, turned what wasn't supposed to be a weakness into a weakness. The spies were in an uproar. Even though they didn't know who was who, they still knew the ones from their own guild, so they began to discuss amongst each other. Minnesota. Lord Grim's way better than I thought. Who is that launcher? She seems even better than Lord Grim. Are these guys even from the same world as us? Even though it was somewhat exaggerated, it was quite close to the truth. In a short moment, the spies all forgot why they were here and were only gasping in admiration at their brilliant playstyle. After a while, they recalled their goal, but with where they were at right now, even if they wanted to die, they couldn't. However, everyone noticed that despite Lord Grimm's and Cleansing Mist's amazing playing, beating the Guardian by themselves wasn't possible. Even if they didn't make any mistakes, they would eventually run out of mana. And without mana to use skills, they had no way of revolving around the Guardian like they were doing now. The Guardian was set up for 20 players to kill. Just from this, it was easy to see that it was much stronger than a boss from a 5-player dungeon. No matter how exceptional they were at lasting a long time, it wasn't possible to completely finish the dungeon with just 2 players. Furthermore, these two's attack tempos were very quick. Their mana consumption was certainly more than ordinary, so it would be even more difficult to endure for so long. This battle required everyone's strength. Thinking of this, the spies calmed down. These two really were incredible. But even so, their goals could still be reached. No matter what happened, as long as they joined the battle, then finding an opportunity to kill themselves should be easy, no? They were all pretty much thinking like this. At this moment, Lord Grimm and Cleansing Mist finally changed up their actions. The two characters used aerial fire and landed in front of the line of spies on the left side. The Guardian chased after them. None of the spies panicked. On the contrary, they were quite hopeful. Feeling good about dying was a very rare experience. They were all squirming with longing. As soon as the Guardian's attack descended, it wouldn't be good if they took the initiative to kill themselves, but they could at least pretend that their reaction speeds were too slow to survive. Closer. Closer. The Guardian had already reached in front of them. Just as it was about to attack the line of players, it suddenly turned around. Attack! Lord Grimm suddenly shouted. The spies stared blankly as the Guardian's back turned to face towards them. With such a large opening exposed, they had no choice but to attack. But the Guardian completely ignored them. It continued to stride forward. The spies naturally chased after it to attack. They hoped the Guardian would turn its head to look at them, but they knew that it wouldn't. This was because they could already see that Lord Grimm and Cleansing Mist had already begun working separately. Lord Grimm stood on one side, while Cleansing Mist stood on the other. Right now, the Guardian was heading towards Cleansing Mist. Only now did the spies realize that they hadn't known where the Guardian's aggro was the entire time. In the beginning, Cleansing Mist had pulled the monster, but then Lord Grimm had snatched it away. Afterwards, the two both jumped at the same time. When the Guardian tried to catch them, the only thing the spies could remember was that it was chasing them around. Who exactly was it going for? Impossible to tell. They couldn't see it. But now that they separated, it was very clear that the Guardian's aggro was locked onto Cleansing Mist. Right now, the aggro wasn't in their direction. They could only chase and unleash their attacks at the Guardian's back. But no matter what they did, the Guardian refused to turn around. Soon enough, they all became the team's DPS and the reflection from the spies' screens showed their depressed expressions. Some tried to take the initiative and attempted to create an opportunity for themselves. But who would have thought that as soon as they moved forward, Lord Grimm would appear in front to block them. He then gave an order, "Do not go past me." It was a very simple order. If they couldn't even follow this, calling themselves a new player wouldn't be a good enough explanation. The only explanation would be that they were idiots. It would also make it obvious that they were intentionally trying to mess things up. Helpless, they could only obediently follow Lord Grimm's directions and attack. "Stop!" Lord Grimm shouted again. Another simple command that they couldn't disobey. Even though some of them pretended that they hadn't heard it and continued to attack, Lord Grimm called them out by name and even messaged them personally. There was no way that they could keep pretending. And these few extra hits weren't enough to create enough of a disturbance. "Retreat back to your original positions," Lord Grimm said. They could only retreat. Some wanted to pretend that they didn't remember where they were originally and stand in the wrong spot, but they soon discovered that they weren't able to fake it. This was because their troops weren't completely pure. Soft Mist, the battle mage from Lord Grimm's friend group, accurately stood at her original position. And then, those who stood in the wrong spot were immediately corrected by Lord Grimm with Soft Mist as the reference. The spies were very sad. This was because they saw that not long after they retreated, the Guardian unleashed a powerful skill, which would have hit them. Unfortunately, the opportunity to kill themselves passed by just like that. The spies on the left line looked towards the other side. They watched as the Guardian ferociously charged towards that side and watched as the spies on the right side began to think the same as them previously. Suddenly, their hearts thumped as they realized something. Bang! Just when the spies were trying to figure out what to do next, gunfire exploded onto the Guardian's body. Lord Grim hadn't retreated like the spies on the left line. Instead, he had continued to attack, and after the barrage, the Guardian turned around. And sure enough, the spies cried out in their hearts. And then, the spies on the right line did what they had done previously. They furiously chased after and attacked the Guardians back with cleansing mist as the person they couldn't go past. Everything was just that simple. It could be your first time playing Glory, but you had still played for around 30 levels. As long as you were a human being, there was no reason you couldn't do such a simple task. The spies were in complete dismay. They discovered that they really had become free laborers. With the situation they were in, there was no way they could die, unless Lord Grim and Cleansing Mist made mistakes. However, they had already witnessed their skill. And after separating, their aggro control appeared to be even more precise. The two could actually make the Guardian run back and forth between the two teams. If the battle continued like this, the clerics might not even need to use a heal. They were all frightened now. Even though on the surface, it seemed like nothing had changed, but in the chat, they were already in complete disorder. Right now, even if they wanted to die, they couldn't. To possess such terrifying control, just who were these two? Chapter 354, Firm Decision. However, without any definitive proof, thinking that a normal player in the game was a top-tier pro player exceeded their imagination, especially for the more experienced players of Glory. Every single one of these spies were experienced veterans though, so in the end, they didn't dare think to assume two players' true identities. Everyone still carried one last line of hope. After all, this sort of precise control was very demanding for the player. A single error could cause the whole situation to go amiss. And losing control over a monster's aggro was the main reason for a team wipe, so if something like that really did happen, then pretending to be noobs and dying would be a lot easier. Only Blue River and the others, who knew of these two's true identities, felt truly hopeless. Who were these two? These were the two players that had consecutively won Best Duo in the pro scene. With that type of synergy between them, they wouldn't deserve that title if they slipped up while dealing with an NPC. Blue River still received messages from other spies though, who were still patiently analyzing the situation. Lord Grim's true identity was knowledge that only relatively high-ranking members of Blue Brook Guild knew. When they faced him, they often had feelings of cowardice and fear. These feelings had already overwhelmed Blue River. However, he couldn't share his knowledge with them and could only watch as they patiently waited for an opportunity. He strengthened his resolve and decided that he too would hope that a miracle would occur. Correct. In Blue River's eyes, hoping that this duo would make a mistake was the same as hoping for a miracle. Attack. Retreat. Attack. Retreat. Those were pretty much the only words that came out of Lord Grim's mouth. Their attacks were led by him and Cleansing Mist. Their retreats were led by Soft Mist and Steamed Bun Invasion. The two didn't make any mistakes. He goes, then she goes. Everyone had already gotten used to the routine. Making a mistake now would be extremely embarrassing. Miracle. A miracle is a highly improbable event. Blue River was hoping for a miracle, but the majority of the spies held a normal attitude. In their eyes, it would be a miracle if the two didn't make a mistake. And the result? The Guardian's health continued to drop. Those who were hoping for a miracle didn't receive one. Those who were afraid of a miracle watched as the miracle began to unfold. The spies no longer had the time to continue waiting for the two to make mistakes and began to employ more active approaches. They would go all out in order to force the Guardian's aggro to go out of control. The spies who tried to do this were initially afraid of arousing Lord Grim's suspicions because of their unrestrained attacks, but in the end, none of them were called out for it. As a result, all of the spies began to think along the same line: don't worry about aggro, just put out as much damage as possible. However, Lord Grim's and Cleansing Mist's aggro control wasn't disrupted. The two continued to pull the Guardian back and forth. The spies discovered that their unrestrained damage dealing only increased the speed at which the Guardian was dying. Not one spy there wanted that to happen. Seeing that their method wasn't working, they immediately abandoned it. Attacking resolutely wasn't good. Attacking too slowly would arouse Lord Grimm's suspicions. The bunch of spies were having great difficulty figuring out what to do. With none of their schemes working, they attempted to do something again. Finally, after seeing that the battle was coming to a close and Lord Grimm and Cleansing Mist didn't look to be making any mistakes anytime soon, the spies from the top guilds were now discussing in private and reporting their situation to their higher-ups. Blue River also noticed that their QQ group chat had gone into a huge commotion. With the battle shifting from one side to the other, he had the time to look over at the chat occasionally. He hastily skimmed over it, but didn't see anything substantial. Though in-game, he received a message and the group chat quickly came to a conclusion. The notification explained that there were already so many spies. Sacrificing one or two wouldn't be a problem, but they had to break Guild Happy's momentum and have the 10th server see that Lord Grimm's guild could also encounter problems. As for the plan itself, they had to pick which spies to sacrifice, in order to intentionally mess up the situation and create a chance for a team to wipe. In the end, because Blue Brook Guild and Tyrannical Ambition had 4 spies inside the guild, the 2 guilds would sacrifice 1 spy each. After receiving the message, Blue River told the other 3 spies, but who would have thought that the 3 would fight over who would be sacrificed? As the guild leader, Blue River naturally had his own pride, so he didn't join his subordinates in fighting for the spot. Plus, he knew that he was only temporarily using this account. 2 people were not allowed to use the same account at once. He still had to take care of his main account. What guild leader would personally become a spy? In the end, Blue Brook Guild rolled a die to see who would be the sacrifice. Tyrannical Ambition pretty much did the same to choose their sacrifice as well. They then communicated with their higher-ups. The order came down to immediately begin. There wasn't much time left. Under the gazes of envy from the other spies, the 2 sacrifices began to wreak havoc. Even though being a spy in-game wasn't as thrilling as in real life, apart from a few abnormal people, most people didn't like doing this type of thing. Being a spy meant becoming friends with someone and then selling them out. Whether it was for justice or not, doing it always felt bad. The 2 sacrifice just happened to be on the same side, and since the 2 sides took turns attacking, this allowed them to work together to attempt to disrupt the flow. It just happened that their team was chasing after the Guardian and attacking right now. The 2 confirmed the command and they no longer hesitated. Anything Yi Shu told them not to do, they would immediately do. The first thing they had to do was pass the line that Yi Shu told them not to pass. Amidst the spies' hopeful gazes, they suddenly heard 2 system notifications. 2 guild notifications popped up in their guild chat. Player More Seasoning has been kicked out from the guild by guild leader Lord Grimm. Player Clearly Smooth has been kicked out from the guild by guild leader Lord Grimm. The spies' attacks clearly turned sluggish all of a sudden. They almost completely stopped attacking. The decision had been too decisive. More Seasoning and Clear Smooth had only passed Lord Grimm by 1 unit, but Lord Grimm didn't even attempt to ask what was going on and directly kicked them out of the guild. The Guardian challenge could only be done by guild members. With them being kicked out from the guild, the 2 were immediately kicked from the dungeon. They might not have died, but they had been sacrificed for nothing. The spies calmed themselves down with great difficulty and then immediately reported the situation to the higher-ups. Blue River heard the QQ group chat go into a frenzy again. The discussion seemed to be even crazier than before. "There's no time left," Blue River quietly said. The Guardian was almost dead. Blue River could see it very clearly. How could the others not know? The Guardian would be dead in a short moment and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "Should we stop?" Another private message came. Some of the spies' attacks had already gone sluggish, enough to make others suspicious. "Don't," Blue River decided and immediately told them not to. "There's no point," Blue River said. It's not that they didn't know kicking players who were causing trouble would destroy their plan. They just didn't think that Lord Grimm would be so decisive. They thought it was quite unexpected. Lord Grimm always communicated with them when they made mistakes, so the two spies took advantage of this fact to use the best way to cause a ruckus. Who would have thought that as soon as they broke his rules, they'd be kicked? It was something no one expected. Even if they chose more sacrifices, they would be decisively kicked out in the same way. Since the Guardian had so little health left, they weren't necessary to beat it. After all, Guild Happy still had 4 actual members. Slowly whittling down the Guardian's last bit of health wouldn't be a problem. Blue River completely gave up for an even deeper reason. He felt that if Lord Grimm could be so decisive, then he might have figured out that they didn't have good intentions long ago. So many high-leveled players joining at once was already very suspicious. This was why everyone wanted to act like new players and get wiped out in order to erase any doubts. But who could have thought that the two's coordination would be so good, from their positioning down to the very details? With all of the orders so simple, intentionally breaking them was difficult to do. Even for more seasoning and clear smooth, who had been kicked out in the very first moment, if they had been allowed to rush forward, how much harm could their betrayal do? No one had any confidence in their answer. It was good now though. They didn't need to worry about anything anymore. The Guardian's health was so low and it would soon kneel to the ground. The goal for the Guardian challenge wasn't to kill it, but rather to make it kneel. From this acknowledgement, Guild Happy would receive the Guardian's blessing. When the guild reached level 10, the Guardian would be stronger and it would not submit to the guild. At that time, they would have to try the challenge again and defeat the level 2 Guardian. Amidst the Guardian's wild laughter, the world and Guild Happy received an announcement, congratulating on the guild's success in beating the Guardian and were awarded the Stat Guardian's blessing. The guild celebrated. After understanding the strength of the Guardian's blessing, the players had already studied what to do with their new points. Some carefully looked at their extra points, but didn't want to use them yet. They would put it to one side for now in case. Some were in high spirits and immediately allocated their extra points. Blue River and the others. They could only feel depressed, but they had to pretend they were happy. Plus, they had participated in the Guardian Challenge, so they should be even happier. After being unhappy for only a day, these spies already needed to display an attitude that was completely different from how they were feeling. Luckily, this was in-game. If it had been face-to-face, they would have already been exposed. Guild leader, why did 2 of our players suddenly get kicked out? It seemed like they were part of your team, someone suddenly asked. Chapter 355, Who's leaving? Who's staying? As soon as someone said this, a lot of people began to wonder as well. Although, for the spies, they all froze as if they had been struck by thunder. Who would have thought that Lord Grimm would be so quick and decisive? Could he have seen through them from the start? If that were the case, then the others who had come in together with them, were in the same position that they were in. The only difference was that those 2 had acted out of line and exposed themselves. As for the others, even though they didn't put on a very good performance, they at least did as they had been told. Had they been detected by Lord Grimm or not? This was what made everyone feel uneasy. The spies once again began chatting. They had planned on killing themselves from the very beginning. Failing the Guardian Challenge was only their secondary objective. Their main objective was to pretend that they were new, inexperienced players in order to avert any suspicions towards them. But these guys had messed this up. Under Yi Shu's and Su Mucheng's lead, where it wasn't possible to make any mistake, they all still actively looked to make mistakes. That was the complete opposite of their main objective. The past was the past. They no longer thought about it, but then suddenly, someone raised the question, making everyone once again recall their identities and think of Lord Grimm's decisiveness at that time. It was as if cold water had been splashed on their heads and they immediately woke up. Messages continued to be typed in the chat and the question had been lost amidst the storm. However, it would never be erased from the spies' minds. The spies all stared intently at their screens and at the chat to see if Lord Grimm would reply. They all hoped that Lord Grimm wouldn't see the question. Lord Grimm didn't speak in the guild chat, but rather in their party chat. Good work everyone, Lord Grimm's name suddenly appeared. It was nothing. How could that have been difficult? The spies lied. Even though from a killing the Guardian perspective, it was nothing, was the truth, but from the spies' perspective, the battle had been very difficult for them. Then what now? Lord Grimm said. What now? They didn't understand. Stay or leave. It's up to you guys. Smiley face. Lord Grimm even added a smiley face. The spies stared stupidly at their screens. They understood now. They hadn't dispelled any of Lord Grimm's doubts. They had been compromised from the very beginning, yet even so, Lord Grimm had still bravely brought them to fight the Guardian. Lord Grimm had been confident because he had the skills to create a situation where it wasn't possible for them to make a mistake. The party chat instantly quieted down. Lord Grimm didn't dissolve the party either. For a short moment, no one said anything. This time, even the private messages to the spies had quieted down and instead went directly to their higher-ups. The QQ group chat set up by the top guilds immediately went into a frenzy again. Blue River was already distraught with anxiety and didn't want to be involved any longer. This Lord Grimm. How cunning, Samsara's 10th server guild leader Lonely Drink hatefully spouted. This was the impression that Yi Shu had left him since the very first time they had met, and it would never die. He completely ignored the fact that their plans had been too obvious and went straight for the "it's not our fault. Our opponent's just too cunning" analysis. These characters are useless now. There's no point in keeping them if Lord Grimm already knows, Herb Garden's head guild leader Arasema said. But there's one thing that everyone should know, tyrannical ambitions, Zhang Yu said. Speak. Blue Brook Guild's Changing Spring typed in his usual manner, telling everyone that he was still there. Even though the majority of the players in the party are ours, there's still one person who's not with us. He's an actual high-leveled player who wanted to join Happy, Zhang Yu said. True, Cold Knight naturally helped his boss and immediately provided proof for it from the chat logs. The proof listed the number of spies from each guild. In that 20-player team, there was actually one person who wasn't theirs. What I want to know right now is whether or not some guild is hiding him from us, Zhang Yu asked. Definitely not, Lonely Drink said. The other guild representatives confirmed that they weren't hiding anything either. If that's true, then I believe we can have the majority of our characters leave the guild, but have a small portion of them stay and establish a good relationship with this player. That way, if this guy really isn't a spy, then he can be a good cover for us. If necessary, he can help vouch for us, Zhang Yu said. Might that be a little bit excessive? Arasema said. This time, our biggest issue was that we didn't consider everything. Our characters' levels were clearly very high for characters of the 10th server. Lord Grimm would have certainly anticipated that we would send spies into his guild. And with so many high-leveled players coming in at once, how could he not be suspicious? Now that everyone's been exposed, what's the point in trying to continue struggling to stay in? I think it'd be better to just have everyone leave and then later on, have more suitable characters infiltrate. Quote. Oh really? Then how about you guys have everyone leave first, Zhang Yu said. Arasema was about to make the decision, when his mind suddenly spun. Ha ha, if we're going to leave, then everyone has to leave together. Aren't we all in this together? Everyone immediately understood the hidden details. Honestly speaking, Zhang Yu's plan to win over a cover for them wasn't necessary, but could he have intentionally put out the plan in order to get others to object? For example, Herb Garden. After hearing Zhang Yu speak, he nearly had his characters leave. Even though the spies had failed, no one knew which accounts were from which guild. 3 open accounts weren't much to these top guilds. If they really needed to, they could sell them off. However, in the battle between guilds, no one would miss an opportunity to win an advantage. If they hadn't noticed this detail, then later on, if they used their exposed open account again, it wouldn't matter too much if others had found out. Even worse would be if they pretended to not find out and then set a trap. When everyone thought about this, they immediately went silent. After a moment of silence, the most quiet speaker there, Changing Spring, unexpectedly spoke. Who's leaving? Who's staying?